Let me say something before I start this review. A couple of my friends went out and saw this movie shortly after I did. We were talking about it for a while, and they mentioned to me that they couldn't believe that this story hadn't been made into a film before. And I just stared at them, and I said, you obviously haven't seen any of the gangster movies from the 40s, 50s, or 60s, because there are several films made on this character, John Dillinger. And he is one of the most noted people from the early 1930s. Now, I don't blame them for not knowing the story. I doubt many history classes teach about 1930s gangsters. So without giving too much of a history lesson, let me try to give a brief summary of the plot to this film. The film opens in 1933. We're introduced to John Dillinger, who is played by Johnny Depp, and he's being brought to a state penitentiary. Shortly afterwards, he breaks out with a couple of his former gang members. As soon as they escape, they decide to start stealing money from banks just as they had before. At the same time, we are introduced to Melvin Purvis, played by Christian Bale, and he and several other FBI agents are assigned to the Dillinger case. They are to hunt him down and arrest him or kill him by any means necessary. Shortly after this, Dillinger meets a beautiful young girl by the name of Billy Franchett, played by Marion Cotillard. These two hit it off immediately and soon start a good relationship together. So this film basically chronicles Dillinger and Franchett's life together, along with their gang, going through the Midwest and stealing as much money as they can from local banks. So let me say that this was a pretty enjoyable film. There wasn't one cast member, with the exception of Johnny Depp, who didn't do a phenomenal job in this film. The only reason I say with the exception of Johnny Depp was that it seemed as though he was just going through the motions this whole film, almost as though he was bored. Now, I don't know if that's him just trying to play the part of Dillinger or not, but he just seemed bored with the part. There were some times in the film when he actually was doing a very good job, but 90% of the film he just looked bored. But the rest of the cast, Christian Bale, Marion Cotillard, they all do a very good job with their parts. Especially Cotillard. I was amazed at what a good job she did with Billy Franchett, and she was phenomenal in this movie. Now, the plot to this film is good, but it is kind of predictable. You can tell where this film is going to go pretty much halfway through, and you know how it's going to end. Now, I'm not going to give anything away, but I'm just going to say that the film is a bit predictable. And if you know the story of John Dillinger, you know how this movie is going to end. And unfortunately, this movie does run quite long. It runs for nearly 2.5 hours, and there are some scenes in this film that probably could have been cut. But aside from that, this movie really does pull you in, and you feel for every character in this film. So, final rating. This isn't a brilliant film, by no means. Again, it does run quite long, and there are some times when you may be bored with this film, because there are some scenes that don't need to be in there. However, I was impressed by every cast member in this film, and there were several points when I was so enthused with this movie that I was on the edge of my seat, even though I could pretty much tell where this movie was going. While it's nothing phenomenal, it is certainly a good time. I'm going to give this film 3 stars. If you've never heard of this story of John Dillinger before, this is easily a good film to go out and see this summer. However, if you know this story, it's nothing particularly special, but I still recommend that you see it. And let me say one thing, finishing up this review. If John Dillinger was actually like this, if the way Johnny Depp was playing him, he was such a laid-back guy that you could have lit his pants on fire and he would just sit there and not care. This guy gets beaten, shot, punched in the face, and he just sits there and is absolutely calm about it. You could probably run Johnny Depp over with a car in this film. He'd just look up at you and say, "Oh, that'll smart in the morning." You know, like, come on. So, take care.